Welcome to the Awakening Potential podcast, your portal to profound self-discovery and personal growth with the opportunity to change your life. Join us on a riveting adventure every week as we unravel extraordinary tales of ordinary individuals who create extraordinary lives. In each episode, we plunge into captivating stories, life-altering experiences, and profound insights that will spark your journey towards realizing your limitless potential. It seems to me that so many of us feel in this day and age that we're meant for more, and we just don't have the know-how or the potential of how to do it and the skills to overcome those uncomfortable actions moving forward. And today I am joined by Steve forgive me,
Cuoco.
Cuoco. Oh, I knew that. Forgive me, forgive me. In a true luminary of the world, he's overcome numerous traumas himself, making a difference no matter what on so many different levels out there in the world. He'll be sharing his wisdom and life-changing moments as we get ready to listen to him lifting potential. And welcome, Steve. I'm so grateful you're here. You've touched, moved me, inspired, and various conversations we've had at this point, and I'm thanking you for taking your valuable time and joining us here today. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Karen.
Well, share a little bit about your journey, if you would. As I said earlier, we've all had our experiences, and yet on so many different levels, you've overcome so much in a lifetime, and you've just inspired me on so many different levels of your beingness, right? It's a becoming. We learn from the lessons. I guess the question is like, what was your greatest lesson? What was the thing that shifted your energy into doing and being who you are today?
Oh, great question. I was thinking to myself, I had it there for a moment. I would say that everything is not going to happen in the time that I expect it and want it.
Mhm.
That's the
Okay.
hardest. Yeah, I would say that's the hardest. I work in an industry. We live during a time that everything just moves at its different pace, and I've got clients that want goals to be met. I have goals that I would like to have met. And it can be extremely frustrating waiting on the permission or waiting on someone else to say, okay, we're going to do this now, Steven. Okay, we're going to go ahead and book your client now. All right, we're ready to start filming. All right, we're ready to look over the contract.
Mhm.
It's that feeling of I'm at the mercy of somebody else
Mhm.
who could decide how my financial success is going to be, my professional success is going to be. And when I'm feeling in limbo, that affects my emotional and mental health and well being. And that's where at times I can get, and I did get quite often very frustrated.
Right. So how do you overcome your frustration when you get into those spaces? I'm sure a lot of the listeners out there, and I know myself, I've gotten into frustration, deep, dark, ugly. I'm not gonna lie, but we all go down those rabbit holes. How do you
Well,
deal with
no, great question. I shared with you earlier as I was processing. I am dealing with right now a transition in my life with a certain company and business that has a brute attitude. What I mean by brute attitude is these are our policies. This is how we do it. Well, this is how we've always done it. You may have had that contract agreement with your former blah, 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 but backpedaling to this is how we do it. This is what works for us. And I'm
it?
thinking to myself, where do I fit into this? Like, am I not important? Am I just an object? Am I just a thing? Like, why aren't there questions being asked about how I feel? What can be comfortable for both of us? Where's that team partnership? Where's that meeting of the minds? So, as of today, right now, it amazes me that still at my age, in this lifetime, in this timeline, in this world, and in this dimension, you may think that you're going to reach a certain point and you're going to outgrow certain people and certain behaviors and certain things in life. And I'm going to tell you that you can't run from it. I
No.
would think being 50 years old, oh, I would hope by the time I'm 50 or before I'm 50, the world will go and get itself into a place of respect and understanding to let's sit down and have a conversation. There's still people out there, there's still businesses out there that no, 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 it's this way, it's our way. And it's
Yeah.
like, why? So I hope that answers your question.
No, it does. One of the thing I so admire about you, Stephen, is the fact that you are so in touch with your emotions and your feelings. And because this is so near and dear to my heart, I teach this as well for a living. And I know I get stuck and stopped in the space of like, okay, when we don't emote them,
Mm,
that's what causes our illnesses and the stresses which kill us or affect us in some way, shape, or form. You're so in touch with yours, and it's such a gift, especially in a world where it's like, oh, you're not supposed to have a feeling, a thought, or that yet you overlook all of that and you stand in your authentic self, which I
mhm.
so admire about you. And what is the secret? What's your secret? And what had you step into like really that self-discovery of beingness? It really is a beingness.
I will say, in great question, Karen, just like with my experience today,
Mhm.
I give it a thank you. It's uncomfortable. I was frustrated. I took a
Right.
moment in the bathroom before we came on live, and I just wanted to sit as to where am I now?
Mhm.
And it took this moment to realize, wow, Steven's not a victim anymore. He's not reacting, responding as a victim.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Love that.
wow, Steven is not giving away his power by allowing himself to be absolutely in subservitude and allowing that this one-sided one-lane behavior is okay, that Steven, who is being pushed to the back of the line or back of the crowd, is still willing to say, hey, I'm still here,
Uh,
I'm going to have respect, or you're going to respect by at least listening to my truth and how I feel, because we still have a partnership, we're still working together, we're still under a contract.
right, right. But
And with that being said, you know, don't hesitate to shout or to call out, no matter what your position is, to remind people that while you're still involved and they're still involved, you're
Mhm.
not going to be placed on a side and you're not going to be forgotten. And if I may add one thing, this
Right.
one individual who I spoke to, that's supposed to be a representative of the company, said, well, we have other clients that we're also dealing with. You're not the only one that's a priority, and we can't just treat you as a priority. I said, I'm not asking to be treated as a priority. This is where we're at. The attention is on our contract, where we are at right now. And the fact of it is we need to make decisions, because here's the timeline that we have, and we need to have a conversation about this,
Right.
not just sending something by phone and say, this is our company's policy, this is how we do it, and here are the guidelines that you are required to follow. Or,
Right.
do you see where I'm going with this,
Yeah,
Karen?
absolutely. Absolutely. For me in my world, everything is a conversation. It's
Mm-hmm.
challenging to deal with the phones now that have like the automated, like where's the person at the other end kind of conversation. And I certainly feel like I'm not being heard when that occurs. And it certainly takes away my privilege of choice. Uh, Again, is this the world we're living now? Is it me that needs to adapt to it? Or, I just keep going through all of those self-inquiries myself because I've put in, like yourself, and it's obvious you've put in so much work. And I really admire that because when you invest in yourself and you do all the work, you rise above the rest in a sense. And not that I'm saying we're better than anybody by any stretch, but we're learning how to create a space of ease and peacefulness in our lives, right? Joy and fulfillment. I mean, that's certainly mine. I don't, what is I mean, that's one of my values, joy, peace, personal freedom. Everybody has a different why. I mean, what's your why that keeps you going and grounded?
I'm just going to be honest and say it. And anyone that watches
Yeah.
this, let me tell you, I'm not here to be combative
No.
uh, or uncooperative. But I have found that most people, and I'm going to tell you, it's gotten worse, Karen. Most people who have an employee mindset
Exactly.
tend to have these erratic, unstable behaviors. Either it's one extreme to where it's just a paycheck.
Yeah.
Um, it's just something so I can have insurance for myself and my family. I'm just going through the emotions to do what I need to do. Lack of care, lack of commitment.
Yeah.
Then you have another set of employees that have some sort of manager, slight leadership role.
Mhm.
That's where they're used and utilized as advocates. Think of um, people rowing in a boat.
Mm.
So you've got the boat that is the one set of an employee mindset that is just there, take it wherever you want, it'll do whatever you want, it is complicit and compliant. Then you have your second, as I was going into, role of an employee mindset, where you've got the rowers.
Mhm.
You've got the ones that are doing the work, they're following the rules, they're following the policies and procedures, the terms and conditions, and they are programmed to never go out of that outline. They know the frequency, the synchronicity of how to row, and they don't ever deviate that. And it's very difficult. That's the set of an employee mindset that I was dealing with today,
Mhm.
is because there was no room for conversation that they were leaving to have as a discussion, because they set a rule and a law that here are the guidelines, here are the policies and procedures and terms and conditions, and they refuse to have any conversation about how can we work together to implement these policies and procedures, terms and conditions, not saying asking to break them, not saying to commit something illegal, not saying to imply to do something against contract rules, obligations, and whatever else that may be part of the agreement. It's where do we have movement? There's when we think about the people that are rowing the boat, they're all going to be different height, different sizes, different weight, different body structures. Not everybody is going to be one and the same. So you can have terms and conditions and policies and procedures. When you create and build a society, an outlet, a group, a team around that, you have to leave room for these differentials, that the makeup and the body and embodiment is going to slightly change, and there needs to be room and flexibility for these changes and enhancements. It's what we call evolution.
Yeah.
Then you have your third employee mindset, to where there are some that are employees, some that are leaders, and some that are bosses and owners. These can be the most difficult. They are the ones to where no matter where the flexibility is, no matter how the contract is structured, their goal is to make sure that the terms and conditions, policies and procedures, and the contracts never deviate from their benefits.
Mhm. Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I'm dealing with the secondary and the third at the same time. And to say, has it gotten better? I'm going to say I've lived on this earth for 50 years. It's gotten worse. And I will constantly remind anyone to say that if someone tells you it is getting better, you need to find out why their perspective is the way it is, and they may be up to no good. Because there will never be a solid one group that's going to easily say, oh, it's going to work out for the best. It's working out for the better. Unless you are financially and in an environment situation to where you have been given a guarantee or immunity or autonomy, that you will never be touched by adversity.
Yeah.
And usually the people that have the confidence or who feel absolutely confident that they will never be touched by adversity are the ones will say and give you a passive response.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Wow, profound words for sure. So, if you'll just give the audience a little background of who you are. I know we're going to have all of your info and bio in the show notes for sure, but just a little snippet of who you are and where you are today. And I think that might shed some light on your previous conversation.
Thank you. I'm a two-time award-winning publicist. I have been told, and it's been written, that I am an acclaimed radio and media personality. I'm a journalist and also an international best-selling author of guided transformation, poems, quotes, and inspiration.
Love that.
I had to take a breath there for a moment, so I hope I enunciated the S as best of my ability. So once again, Guided Transformation, Poems, Quotes, and Inspiration is my book, and it can be found on Amazon, or you can go to stevencuoco.com, and the link is there as well.
Steven, you're amazing. You still amaze me. I know it. I know, I love that. That's what I love about you. How about before we move forward though, how about one of your quotes, like one of your that's going to really serve this audience well, that off the top from the heart. What is
Okay.
it?
I have one, and I'm going to find it for you. Thank you
Okay.
for the question. Is this where we should have the Jeopardy music playing?
Da, 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 da.
I
Oh,
love it, Karen. Thank you.
yes.
It's coming up soon. It's one I've received a lot of. All right, there's two I'm going to share with you. Here's one. Be careful of those rooms you're desperately trying to get into. Not everything that appears to be golden is actual gold.
Mhm.
And I'm going to get to one of my favorites. I should still have it. Where is it, Karen? Okay, it should be coming up soon. I need to designate a specific folder just for my quotes.
I'm glad I
Um,
could inspire you on this call.
okay, here we go. Actually, what I'm going to do is, so I have it ready just in case I get asked again, I'm going to screenshot this. In the art of communication, we must master the delicate dance to speak with kindness, to listen with humility, and to depart leaving respect intact. And I'm going to say that even in a conversation that I had with the two people that I had today, it could have been in a place to where, just to go back into, I felt that, and keep in mind, to speak with kindness, to listen with humility. I believe we listened, and I believe to humility to a certain point, but ultimately, because we are so disconnected to where there was never a true or real connection that was made because it was only treated as contractual or business. You can only speak to anyone to ask. When we think about to speak with kindness, to listen with humility, and to depart leaving respect intact, you may not always be able to leave or depart with respect intact, but you can in a way to where even if the conversation is not healthy or it's uncomfortable, or there may be certain language that is used that is uncomfortable for someone else, or someone may interpret that the conversation was one way and not two way, there's always a chance to go back to the table. And if there isn't a chance to go back to the table to have a conversation to possibly rectify the situation, send a letter, send an email. And as what I did when I was in the bathroom before we came onto this live interview, Karen, is I searched myself as to where did I leave those three components within myself? Do I feel guilty? I ask myself, do you feel guilty, Steven? No, I don't. Do you feel that you could have used certain choice words that could have made the situation better? That would have been in best interest for everyone? Yeah, I could have, but I know for a fact that if I did use certain language or certain choice words, it would have appealed and appeased and possibly enabled the people I was talking to, because I would have come across passive and in a place of subservitude. I
Yeah.
would not have been speaking my truth. And that's the whole point. There's no such thing of getting it perfect. Just focus on the progress. I know I've got one more month with this company and we will be back at the table. And I do trust and I do know we will move forward amicably, because we did have some text messages afterwards
Love
and
it.
we still were able to communicate, even though they did not appreciate where I stand because it didn't work in their favor. And I did not appreciate their position because their favor and position did not work for us as a team, because I was just sent information of, here's our policies. This is how we always do it. It doesn't matter what the arrangement was before. This is how we're doing it now. I hope that gives clarity to where it's not important to focus on perfection. Make it about the progress. Do what you can do now, even if that's sitting with yourself, as what I did,
Love
and
it.
to search yourself to find out, where am I at now in a situation and how am I reacting or responding? And as I told you, Karen, I'm proud of myself. And why I'm proud of myself is because in a situation, I know that I stood in my power.
Mhm.
I had to speak as loud as possible from being shoved back to the back end of the room,
Right.
because it was made very clear that there was no interest of this party, of these people wanting to hear what I have to say. They only had open ears for their own dialogue. And
Yeah.
they already planned out that there was not going to be room for conversation.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Exactly. What do you do? One of the things you mentioned, which I really admire and adore about you, is you do speak your truth, and not so many people do that. And I've got to assert, like myself, I didn't always speak my truth. I didn't know how, right? So you're speaking it with such conviction, and I love that. And so much of our listening audience probably, I'm going to fathom to say, don't know how to speak their truth. What was the shifting moment, or what was it for you that really had you stand in that power of speaking your truth? And what is it like to be speaking your truth on the other side, right? There's
You're
two
gonna
sides.
know it and you're gonna feel it, Karen, when you're
I
speaking.
know, right.
I feel it from the gut. It rises up. I
Yeah,
feel it in my chest and in my heart. It something happens in the gut area. I feel like I'm speaking from two different parts of
yeah,
consciousness and of my brain, of
absolutely.
myself. Scientists in the medical community believe, that the gut is a second brain to the body. There's
That's
a lot of, it's not woo woo, it's not just holistic. I mean, there's a lot of science that backs up, when we think about it, our organs are its own identity. The heart
absolutely.
knows what it does, the lungs, the kidneys, the pancreas, everything. Even though we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system,
Exactly.
we're not in control of all the nervous systems. So it is its own entity, it is its own identity, it's its own function, body, and embodiment. So
Exactly.
it's all of ourselves to sort out. When people say, a lot of times, and I'm going to speak to this, during a pandemic, I came down with having gastritis, just a
Mm,
lot of bloating and cramping. And when I went to the doctors, because now they encourage you to get a colonoscopy and endoscopy before you're 50 now. I had it when I was, 40, 46, 47 years old. And they found two small little irritation spots in my stomach. And they told me not to worry, it can heal and it can correct itself. And it was a conversation I had with my doctor. And it is medically known
mm.
that worry will trigger problems in the gut.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's become part of my passion, as you know. My whole journey has taken me to start exploring the anti-inflammatory living, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everything is connected. The way we do anything is the way we do everything. And like you, when I started worrying and stressing, and I have a nursing background, stress is connected to so many
Oh,
different Yes. Oh my gosh. And when we step into our truth, seems to me when we step into our truth and start talking authentically, not just to others, but more importantly, first and foremost to ourselves,
Yes.
you were doing the bathroom, right? Then that's when we are in control of that level of stress. Doesn't mean we don't have stress anymore, but we have the power to choose to change it every day in every way. And the
Hmm.
more we are present in the present moment, the more we can take a deep breath. I coach from a space of stop, change, and shift. When we get into our heads and then life is happening, and oh my God, I'm the victim, and blah, 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 and all that. It's like stop and breathe. That pause, right, gives you enough chance and moments to oxygenate your brain so we can think
Yes.
clearly. And
And
most
I
people,
just want to let you know, I'm not anyone who's watching, and just to let you know, I'm looking, oh God, it wants me to sign in. I was looking for the chart that I have that tells you of each organ's, like what happens, of what worry does, what fear does.
yeah,
And it's so true, because when I spoke to my doctor, she
yeah,
agreed, and she said, Steven, she's
yeah,
like, you're going to be fine now. Because she clearly told me that if I don't get the stress and the worry under control as I get older, it could lead to more complications.
absolutely.
So that's the biggest thing. Even if you want to take more of the holistic route, or, they offered me medication, I tried it a little bit, and I was like, no, I mean, we know that the root of the problem is worry. I was stressing myself out because I was stuck at home,
Yep,
forced to where I could not travel,
right.
forced to have to learn new ways to operate a business while being scared of other people losing their jobs and money. And I'm the type of person to where if my clients aren't working and getting paid, I'm not going to require them to pay me.
Exactly.
Even if we have to take a break, I'm
Exactly.
not going to hemorrhage money out of someone who's not making money.
Yeah.
And so it was all these things. And that's how Power 98.5 satellite radio station was born. That's where my prayer was answered. That's where 7 months before the pandemic happened, I got this feeling and this sign, and it took 5 years, Karen. I got this feeling and sign, and even from people and my peers in the entertainment industry and even in the sports industry said, Steven, you're a journalist, you're a publicist. Why don't you, since everyone's doing a pay to play and it's not working for you, there are companies, there are athletes, there are people that cannot take the route of pay to play. And we need more organic platforms for media and for support. That's the legal responsibility as a journalist.
I
We
love
don't go to school and look to do a pay to play when you go to school for journalism. That's media companies, because they need to run the business to pay the staff. And
it.
so, with that being said, that's where Power 98.5 satellite radio was born, because I come to realize and got this feeling in my gut and this feeling in my heart that it's time to start this station. I am now ready to take on the financial and the legal and the moral and ethical responsibility to do this as a business owner and as a publicist, and to know as a journalist what my legal responsibility is to report the news and to be here to do what we do, to inform the public, to be that public representative.
Love that.
And so with that, I'm thankful every day, because when a pandemic hit, and this was one of the things I was asked on a local TV interview, is, creating Live on Air with Steven Cuoco, having my radio station, is to offer conversations. It did not matter to me to know only of your personal, accolades. I
Right.
did not sit down with people who came out with a new book or a new movie. I didn't make it a point to be that's the only topic point. No, what are you doing, Karen? What's happening in your life? What new recipe do you have? Oh, what's happening this weekend? I see you're doing an event. There's always ways to have a conversation. And if we're going to be on a phone, or we're going to be on Zoom, or we're texting, why don't we just get on video? Why don't we just go ahead and get on a radio and do a live interview
Love
and
it.
catch up as two friends? Once again, conversation.
Love
And
it.
that's what skyrocketed not only my radio show, but also what I didn't mention earlier, my radio station, Power 98.5, because companies and businesses, having had worked with and interviewed people from Netflix, HBO Max, Discovery Communications, Hulu, the NFL, UFC, they knew by looking at my content and doing their due diligence and researching that I was there for them. I was there for the people as a representative for the people to sit down and let's find out who you are. Because to close by saying, if the public doesn't truly know who you are, there is no way to get advertising, sponsors, or endorsements, whether you're a professional athlete or if you're a musician or a DJ. They all rely on, even film and TV, they all rely on money, endorsements, investments. And people want to be secured in knowing that depending on what the ROI is going to be, the return on investment, they want to know that there is a relationship there and that it's going to be worth the investment because they're not going to be taken advantage of or used.
Right.
And that's the number one thing that I enjoy with my radio show, is to remind the public and to educate the public and to let people know that it is our duty for full disclosure to inform, to answer the why before the why is asked. You should not be in a position to wait for the why to be asked, then to have an explanation. Let's give clarity and transparency now so that if there is a why question, what are we going to have for lunch today? Why are we not going out this afternoon and celebrating?
Right.
Why are we not making this, instead of a year contract, why don't we make it a 5-year contract? Let the why be a huge, big surprise. Try not to let it be the starting foundation of just basics.
Yeah, love it. I love it. I have a lot to learn from you yet.
You're doing a great job, Karen.
Thank you. I'm always open for learning and expanding. This
Well,
is
I
new
just
for
gave you
me.
some tips.
You did, and I'm thankful. I am taking it all in, and I'm really curious, if I may, in closing, a couple of things, if we can, and I'm fascinated with conversations, as you know. Um, is there a correlation between who you were growing up to what you're doing today? I
Oh, yeah.
noticed so many people who are really living their authentic truth and living their passion purpose. There's a correlation to either what you played with or something you did that inspired you as a child and or teen to what you're doing today. And what was that for you?
For me, living with my biological family who struggled horrifically with narcissism, drug addiction, alcoholism, gambling addiction, TV was my outlet, TV and radio. And that's what got me through, is to live vicariously, to find that happiness in those movies that we used to watch that were really silly in the 1970s and the 80s. I mean, like National Lampoon's Vacation, or, people like Chevy Chase, when we think about Christmas Vacations, and, the way people channeled their pain in the 70s and 80s through comedy was huge, to where you would be shocked to find out of the type of background they ever came from. And I could relate to some of the stories of what people were going through when we think about Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor. I can't relate to what they personally went through because I was a child at the time, but to understand what type of environment they were in, what they were dealing with when they came out, talking about their stories and the relationships that they have with their families. It's amazing why we watch or listen to certain people that we listen to, even during the days when Howard Stern was extraordinarily huge.
Right.
Who was your favorite disc jockey? Who was your favorite television host? Growing up watching Laverne and Shirley, or Welcome Back, Carter, or Eight is Enough. Movies like 16 Candles, Breakfast Club. These are all things I live vicariously through, because as I grew, I could relate. And if I didn't relate to then, as I got older, especially during the 80s, we were a very rebellious generation because we are a generation that had to fend for ourselves. Even though we come from our parents or of the boomer generation, still a lot of times there were both of our parents, just as mine, had to work. So
Yeah.
there were times I had to come home. I made my own dinner, made my own lunch. My parents took great care of us, but I'm not going to, say that there weren't times that they had to sacrifice time with us to
Yeah.
be unavailable so that they can financially take care of us. My dad is a military veteran. Sometimes he could not be around because the military required him to be somewhere else. My mother, she was, huge asset during the AIDS epidemic and a foot soldier on that. That took up a lot of time in the 80s when that had happened. So my brother and I, most often, we would come home from school, and yes, we had to do our homework. We had to make sure that our parents still trusted us because I didn't want to be dealing with babysitters. My mother tried it twice. It did not work. You know, I did not like to be supervised as a
Yeah.
child. I came from an environment where I had no supervision. I learned to survive on my own through ways of how I survived. And I wasn't in a place where I trusted parenting. I didn't trust role models. I didn't even know what that meant. All I knew is in order to survive, I had to go, I had to try to get to A, and then this is how I can get to B, and maybe I can jump over C and D in order to get to E and F. That is how I survived for almost 8 years. So once again, to answer the question is there are a lot of things that shape us, and it may take months, days, and decades to realize even now, 30, 40 years later, of certain influences of how I see certain things to what they are today. Um, to put it simply, I was getting my hair cut the other day, and I love my hairstylist, his studio. Beautiful. He's got photos of Marlon Brando and Mike Tyson. And there's one photo I absolutely love of Rodney Dangerfield. Now, he had some controversy years ago, due to his comedy and things like that. But I learned, honestly, when it comes to Rodney Dangerfield, he had this, as you know, maybe Karen, somewhat unique way of how he communicated with women and in his films with silliness and how things were sexualized a lot in the 80s. And I just come to realize through certain comedians and certain comedies of that was my way to learn how to grow up and to understand what is appropriate and not appropriate and to learn, certain people's viewpoints about Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and other people, even shows like All in the Family with Archie Bunker, very controversial. But it
Exactly.
opened up conversations of what my family thought was appropriate, what they didn't think was appropriate. And even though my parents were a huge role model, what struck me was my mother, especially both of my parents being deacons in a church, missionaries, would never sit down and watch an Eddie Murphy or a Rodney Dangerfield or a Richard Pryor comedy show or anything. But what was amazing is my mother used to pre-watch movies before she would let us watch them, and she watched that movie, Critical Condition, with Richard Pryor. And I was shocked about how much my mom liked that movie, where she wanted to watch it for the second time and took me to the movies to see it. And I understood because I believe it was a comedy spoof about the medical field and where Richard Pryor somehow got into the medical profession. And I did say to my mom before, and I said, I thought you didn't like his comedy or anything else like that. But what I learned in my whole point in this is, as devout of a Christian as my mom was, she's no longer here with us. And I would say, in present tense, still would be or is. She had such an open mind to where she did not judge people to think you're this way, and I'm never going to give you a chance to ever allow to have the opportunity to get to know who you are. She knew who Richard Pryor was. She understood what his content was. But for some reason, this movie, and something about it drew my mother to watch it. And she saw Richard Pryor in a different light and in a different way. And her thought and perception of him as a professional changed. But keep in mind of what I just said, Karen. She had such an open mind to where anything and everything is possible, to where something can change your interest, something can intrigue you to give you the opportunity to give you a whole new perspective and perception in this world, to be able to get out of judgment. My mother was in judgment, and my mother didn't want to be in judgment.
Right.
And something happened to where she found an opportunity and she took that. Now, I'm not speaking for her to say that she did that for personal reasons. She did that for professional reasons. All I know is my mother loved movies, and something happened and she watched this to where she wanted to watch it again. And it happened to star Richard Pryor, who I was forbid to ever watch his comedy shows. But I was able to have an experience with my mom. And I remember she was sitting to my right, and I'm here watching a movie and watching my mom laugh. And I turn to my right and I look at her, and I'm thinking to myself, what an experience, because my biological family was hatefully judgmental.
Mm.
And most people have this idea of how Christians are. And I'm going to tell you, not all Christians are scary, and not all Christians are unreasonable. And
Exactly.
what brought me the most joy was that I'm sitting here watching a movie with my mom, and to see this woman who saw something in me, a child that nobody wanted, and she took me and wanted to be my mom. And here I am now sitting after all the time. I'm thinking, boy, you won't let me watch his comedy shows, but you sure will let me watch the film. But I'm thinking to myself, what an incredible woman. This woman is teaching me something my family never taught me, and that's to give people a chance.
Mm. Love that.
That's to have an open mind, that no matter what we may judge about something at the time, it always has the ability to change and evolve. And it's up to us to give ourselves the opportunity and the chance to be able to experience that and to have that things open and flexible, to have a better and perspective and opportunity in life than what you may have now. Because who you may not like now, you may end up liking later.
Exactly.
Sometimes enemies do become friends.
Yeah, absolutely. I love those are incredible words of wisdom and lessons learned. And for me, everything is a lesson anyway. Pretty much closing comments, but just to wrap it up, Stephen, and I'm so grateful you were here. I always love conversing with you. What is something that the audience can take away? You've given us such bombs of wisdom as it is, but just in closing, coming from a space of those who are really wanting to step out of where they're at now and step into something greater than they know themselves to be. What's one little nugget that you can leave us with in parting?
I'm
And
gonna what I just shared.
yeah,
Have an open mind. Um, it goes back to leave room for growth.
no worries.
So
Leave room for growth was your last.
leave room for growth. Leave room. Look what just happened. When something comes knocking on your door, he was insistent.
Yeah.
When something comes knocking on your door, I could have, I'm going to just put it to you this way. I'm glad I answered it to let him in to do what he needed to do. It's a maintenance guy. Um, be persistent,
Yeah.
and don't hesitate to allow, like what just happened, this opportunity. This person was making an effort in making sure that he did not miss me. He was making an effort in making sure that he took his time to patiently wait for me to see if I am here and available to answer that call.
Right.
And I encourage anybody to, the number one thing is don't dismiss. Don't dismiss other people. Don't dismiss your opportunities. And also at the same time, if it's not working for you now, the relationship, the contract, the arrangement, it is your responsibility to find a way, when possible, to see if there are, or when there are, opportunities that can be offered for a greater, better experience, just like what my mom did, just like what my mom did in sharing and letting me know that she's not a prude, she's not stuck up, she's not closed-minded, she's not a judgmental Christian. She's a woman doing her best for what she knows and what she wants to do and how she wants to be as a mother and as a woman for her children.
Yeah,
Just do your best.
that's it. Steven, thank you, thank you, thank you.
But you see that?
I love it. I love that was a perfect demonstration. This is what I like about, we're raw and real. I'm not
Yeah,
clipping anything. I mean, this is what you see is what you get kind of thing.
yeah,
And the lesson here is you have a choice.
yeah.
Don't be ordinary. Give yourself permission to be extraordinary. Steven, thank you so much. I look forward to
Thank
connecting
you.
sometime soon.
Thank you, Karen.